Welcome everyone to this session on clustering techniques. So today, with respect to clustering, we will first of all try to understand for what purpose we are using clustering. So clustering, as such, a technique which is used in unsupervised learning. Okay, so unsupervised learning. So it's used here actually. So this is where we are using the the clustering technique. So how the unsupervised learning data set looks like, it will not have a y value. Okay, y won't be there. Okay, so that's the whole idea actually. So that means here we are not going to do a kind of classification as we have done in supervised learning by using this support vector machines and the logistic regressions and all of those things. Here we'll be just trying to, we are having a collective data set and we are trying to give a kind of logical division within the data set. That is the objective of this unsupervised learning. So what we are trying to provide a logical division for the data set. So even though it borders on classification, but exactly it is not classification because here we are just grouping the data into separate data sets. That's what we are trying to do actually. But basically in a supervised learning techniques, that too in classifications, we are trying to do a kind of classification where we are trying to mention uh, the groups are already available there. So basis those groups, we are trying to find out uh, to which group a particular value belongs to. Okay, so that is the difference between supervised and unsupervised learning. So in unsupervised learning, the groups are hidden and we have to use certain techniques to identify those logical groups. But supervised learning, after identifying the groups, we are trying to do a kind of classification. So that is what we are trying to do here actually, right? So let me erase this entire aspect. So let me select all of this and delete it. And now, so what will be the example for unsupervised learning? So what are its applications? So basically, using unsupervised learning, we can group. Sorry, we can group customer segments basis their buying behavior. We can also identify, we can also do a kind of group with this. For example, if we are going to do a corona study, we can identify which are the different groups that are available, different groups basis their habits. That's how also another way of logically splitting a group actually. If at all you are having another data set which talks about, for example, here we have taken the wine data set. So here in the wine data set, this I took it from Kaggle actually. So the wine data set has got several, several data points. So let's look into it so that you'll understand exactly what we are trying to do. So I'm in practice, so I'm just opening it and so here, okay, so I mean in this wine data set, what I'm having is basically different types of columns I'm having, which talks about how the how, I mean, what is we have something called as flavonoids. We have something called as the hue of the wine, and so likewise several techniques, several columns are there actually, which so those data points I have taken from Kaggle, right? So let me write down what exactly is there, right? So I have hue, basically, let me put it. So I have something called as hue, that's basically color, right? Then I have the intensity of the wine, color intensity, right? So basically, then I also have something called as uh, let me check it out. Uh, yeah, I have the wine data set here. And, so let me give a new share now, actually, so that would help us a lot. So let me do the sharing, sorry. So here, if you see here, I have something called as Proline. Basically, it talks about the kind of amino acids that is available, and because this amino acid will give you much better vitamin C to the body actually. And the hue and the color intensity. So hue and color intensity determines the aging of the wine, as well as the taste of the wine, the color intensity, pH level, so all those things. Then we have the flavonoids and the manganese and the ash. So depending on the type of fruits that are used in the wine, we are trying to split the wine into different the logical group actually. So that is what we are trying to do here. So I mean, so before doing that, let's understand exactly, I mean, the different types of clustering techniques that we are having actually. So I'm just deleting all of this. So, so the different types of clustering techniques that I'm having is basically the k-means clustering, k-means, and I have hierarchical clustering, and within hierarchical clustering I have something called as divisive, and I have agglomerative clustering. Okay, so this is basically divisive is, I would call it as top down. So that means a big cluster will be there, and those big cluster we are trying to divide into smaller parts. Agglomerative is, you have, it's basically bottom up clustering. So here we are going to talk about, we have to start with 2 data points, and these 2 data points get added to other clusters also. For example, these clusters, and then the clusters keep on joining. For example, if you have so many data points, so if you have 3-4 clusters, and these 4 clusters again become, then this 4 cluster become one big cluster actually. So that is what agglomerative data is all about actually, right? So first of all, we'll start with k-means, and then we'll go on to agglomerative. So the first thing is, I mean, through this we will try to understand which is the best technique, and from there we'll take it up actually, right? So so let me remove all of this. Okay, so yeah, so I'm just doing a new share. I have done this file. So if I go through the code, basically, I mean, I'm basically importing all the pandas data set and the NumPy data set, the libraries, and I'm just downloading the matplotlib, and then I'm downloading the k-means clustering and the seaborns. And then I'm reading the wine.csv, which is taken from Kaggle actually. So the intent of this particular exercise is to classify the wine according to their different flavors, different intensity and strength, all those things actually. And here the kind of technique that we are going to use is we'll start with k-means and then we'll go on to the hierarchical clustering actually. And then these are all the different columns that are available, right? Proline, diluted U, and color intensity, right? Likewise, there are different types of there are different types of columns available, and then we're just displaying the data set, how it looks like. And then what I'm doing is I'm just dropping the serial number, which is not needed, that column I'm dropping. And I'm ensuring that for doing this clustering, it's better that you have a better, unnecessary data. If you remove, then it will be much better. I'm calculating that, I'm finding out the data types over here, and then everything is in integer and float format actually. That means here in numeric, and then I'm plotting a kind of correlation, Pearson correlation matrix plot. This helps me to understand the correlation between two variables, so how strongly they are correlated with each other. So this particular portion is basically the high intense portion. That means two variables are highly correlated with each other. So basically the idea is we need to, if this is happening, it's better to remove those autocorrelated variables. Instead of saying autocorrelated, they are highly correlated. So when one variable is correlated, another is also increasing. So basically we have to remove such variables actually. So anything beyond 0.89 and all, we need to be really conscious about actually. And if you see here, there is a diagonal going as 1. That means there is a perfect positive correlation between two variables, like variable 1 and variable 1 and variable 1. So basically this is a variable 1 and this is also variable 1. That's the reason there is a positive, perfect positive correlation. So that's the reason we are just ignoring this aspect actually. And if you see here, the flavonoid, there is a correlation between flavonoid, which is basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th variable, and there is a correlation between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th variable actually. Okay, that is, so this is here 0.86. I think it's better that you look into these aspects and try to remove this type of variables. And if you also see here, there is a strong correlation actually. So in a real life world, we have to be really conscious about these things. But since we do not have a statistical evidence, we are actually not going to remove it right now. In the next session, we'll be discussing basically how to deal with this type of correlations actually when two variables are correlated with each other, right? So this is what I have identified, and then through this I have identified what are all the through this pair plot I'm trying to identify what are all the different clusters that are available. And if you see here, in some portions there are 2 clusters available. In some portions there are like around 2 or 3 clusters are there. And if you see here, there is an outlier. See here, there's an extended line with some hump. So I would say call this as a kind of outlier. So, and then, so likewise, right? So in some places it looks perfectly normal, this particular data point, right? So likewise, there are different types of, so this is the kind of visualization method to identify how many clusters we can determine, because basically in clustering method, we have to decide in k-means we have to, it's better that we decide and tell Python how many clusters the data has to be broken up into. So that should be perfectly logical, right? So that's the reason we are doing a kind of visualization analysis. But if you are finding it very difficult to do in this way, we also have other methods. So we'll come on to that later, how to determine the right amount of clusters for any unsupervised, I mean, for when we are doing the k-means or any other clustering methods actually. So we'll come on to that, but visualization is one of the method to do the clustering to identify the number of clusters in a data set actually. And before we get into the actual clustering, we are actually doing a transformation of the data. If you see here, I am just importing min-max scalar, and I'm also importing, I'm doing a transformation of the data set, and actually, and see here, the entire data set has been converted into an array and it has been transformed, right? So it has become 0.08 likewise, right? So it has become transformed. The idea of doing it is all the data columns have to be brought into the same scale so that there were any kind of anomalies, those things can be ironed out, streamlined, and we will not have any kind of inflated result coming out actually. So that's the reason we are doing this transformation. And after transformation, we are trying to determine how many clusters that needs to be logically, this particular data set has to be broken into. So for that, we are using the elbow technique. So this is a coding. Basically, I'm doing I'm plotting the particular chart for elbow technique. So here exactly I'm seeing, if you see here, this is cluster 1, this is cluster 2 and cluster 3. Between cluster 1 and cluster 3, there is a huge coverage of the distortion, right? So this is all the how much of variation is explained. So much distortion is getting covered in 3 clusters, but between 3 to 4, the distortion covered is very less, and 4 to 5 is bit lesser, and 5 to 6. So that means what we're trying to understand is whether how many clusters will make it more logical. So from our understanding, this one, right, the cluster 3 makes it more logical, right? From greater than 0.70 distortion, it is coming to 0.50 distortion. So this is much better technique for us actually. So we are going in for this particular method, the elbow method actually. So here we are deciding to go with 3 clusters. So just as an example, we are starting with 4 clusters. So if it is going to be 4 clusters, I'm trying to understand, see, I'm also taking this. If it is going to be 4 clusters, I'm trying to understand how it looks like, and I'm doing a kind of prediction with the help of k-means clustering, and then after prediction, I'm printing the prediction. The printed prediction looks like this, right? And then after that, these particular predicted clusters, these are all nothing but different groups, right? 0 is one group, 1 is one group, 2 is one group, 3 is one group. So they are in this order. They are in the sorted order. So you shouldn't sort it again actually. So what we are doing is, after getting this particular prediction of these clusters, that means when I say prediction, basically each row to which cluster it belongs to, that is what is getting predicted here. And then what I'm doing is I'm adding these particular predicted clusters to the original data set. And if I display it, see here, I'm getting all of this. So first row belongs to cluster 2, and fourth row belongs to cluster 0, right? And 147th row belongs to cluster 1, likewise. So that is getting, so that's so what I have done to the original data set, I have added this particular cluster group actually. That's what I have done previously. So ideally here I should have taken only 3, but just for purpose of just as an example, I have taken 4 actually. There are no hard and fast rule, because you know exactly there is a difference between statistical significance and the practical significance. So depending on your business needs, you should go for 3 or 4 actually, or 5. So depending on your business needs, you need to determine that actually, right? Because for example, if you are having a customer data set, and so in a customer data set, if you really dilute the number of customer segment to much smaller segments, then if it becomes very difficult for you to concentrate on those customer segments. That's one thing. Second thing is, if you are having very limited range of products, and if you have too many clusters of the customer segment, then it doesn't make any sense to you, right? So if for limited range of product, you need to have limited range of customers, customer segments to focus upon. So depending on your business need, you need to decide how many clusters that we need to do. So that is the difference between a practical significance and statistical significance. So decide wisely what you really need. And if you see here also we went for 4 clusters. So in 4 clusters, we need to find out whether these 4 clusters is good enough for us to fight with. I mean, for us to fight with the competition, for us to project these 4 different groups into 4 different types of wines, right? So will it be enough for us to withstand the competition? Will it be enough for us to make an impact in the market? So those things have to be taken into consideration actually, right? So that's where this analytics comes into real help. And then after that, what I'm doing, so through this k-means clustering, I was able to predict it. So now what I'm doing is I'm getting into the agglomerative clustering. Basically, in the agglomerative clustering, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to group all smaller clusters. I'm trying to identify data points to clusters to bigger clusters, and bigger clusters to one big cluster, one entire cluster. That's what I'm trying to do here. So if you see here, basically in agglomerative clustering, let me open the whiteboard first, right? So in agglomerative clustering, you are having different methods basically to find out the clusterings actually. So one is basically the single linkage method. Then we have complete linkage. Then we have average linkage. Then we have something called as we also have something called as Schwartz method, right? So for example, in a complete linkage method, imagine if you are having 3 clusters and you are having data points like this, right? 3 clusters are there and you are having data points, right? So if you see here, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to the farthest data points and I'm trying to put the clusters together. So this becomes, so within this farthest, this area, I will put it as 1 cluster. So this is the smallest, right? So within this entire farthest, this is one farthest connection. This is another farthest linkage. This is a third farthest linkage. So within this is much smaller when compared to these 3 things. So this will become 1 cluster. In a single linkage, if you have 3 clusters, you have so many data points. The shortest distance will be connected together, and within the shortest, whichever is the shortest, that will become 1 cluster. And this Schwartz method is basically between the clusters, what minimizes the variation, right? That becomes your cluster actually, right? So among the 3 or 4 clusters, which are the clusters that are having this minimal variation, that becomes 1 single cluster actually, right? So likewise, there are, and in average you are having, so I mean between clusters, what is the average, right? So this is what we are trying to do. So far when we tried linking the points together, they are nothing but the distance between the points, right? So this distance between the point, how they are calculated, that we need to understand. So they are calculated using different methods, the distance between the points, right? In order to connect, I mean, put them as one single cluster, or right, or break them into several clusters. How the distance is calculated? It is calculated using something called as Euclidean method. Yeah, Euclidean distance. Then we have Manhattan distance. Then we have Mahalanobis method. So likewise, we have different types of distance methods to calculate the distance between the data points actually, or calculate the distance between the clusters, right? So two things we need to understand. Remember always, right? So what are the things we need to remember? First thing is what are all the different clustering methods, right? Clustering methods. So we discussed about clustering methods, right? K-means and hierarchical, and within hierarchical, several divisions are there, divisive, and we had agglomerative, right? So this is one thing to be remembered. Second thing to be remembered is how the distance between the clusters are identified, or how the clusters are formed. They are formed using distances, and how the distances are identified using this methods called as Euclidean. Right? Sorry to repeat, but I thought it would help you. So Euclidean method we have, and we have all those Manhattan distances. So distance is another parameter to be remembered, right? Manhattan distance, right? Then we have Mahalanobis method. So likewise, we have different methods actually. And then we should also remember basically the different other techniques, like within agglomerative, what are all the different techniques that we are having actually. So we discussed about right, so complete linkage, we discussed about single linkage, we discussed about Watt's method, likewise, right? So these are all the things you need to remember for clustering. So hope you are able to understand exactly what I was trying to say. So let me go back to the thing again. So here, if you see here, what I have done, I have used in this agglomerative, I have used the distance method to be Euclidean, and I have given the linkages complete. And just for your information, if at all you are going to put something called as Manhattan distance method, and if the linkage is going to be Watt's method, it won't work, because it is basically, forbidden in the Manhattan method to use a Watt's method, actually, or Watt's linkage, actually, right? So you should be conscious about it. So here I have used the Euclidean distance method, and I have used the linkage as complete, and then I have used this transformed data to fit the model, and based on that the grouping is identified. So what I am doing is, to the original data set, I already had one grouping, right? I found out the clusters using k-mean. I stored it under something called as group. So now in the same data set, I am storing the new prediction under group 1 actually, right? Okay, so there is a need for that. So I will let you know why later. And then again, I'm doing the second prediction. So now I'm using another method, Euclidean distance, but I'm using average, and I'm finding out what is that. See here, I'm also giving the number of clusters as 3 actually, right? Because my elbow method set is 3, and there is no hard and fast rule. You can also make it 4 actually. So depending on your business needs and all that, you are going to decide the number of clusters. So now, so if you see here again, the prediction has been done, the clustering prediction has been done, and whatever prediction that has been done here, that I'm storing it in the group 2 label, a new label called as group 2, and I'm storing that in the original data set actually. See here, so original data sets, and again I'm going for Euclidean method. I'm using the Watt's linkage, and I'm storing this cluster in the group 3, new label called as group 3, and I'm putting in the original data set actually. Right. So now the question is, see, I'm trying to find out what is the group-wise, cluster-wise record count in each label. So for example, in group 1, so this one we identified using, right? So we identified using Euclidean method, and the linkage was average, right? So the record count here is For cluster 0, so many records are there. For cluster 161 is there. Cluster 243 is there, likewise. And the second strategy that we used is group, and this is the first one, like for using k-means clustering, we identified, right? So for this, what is the count? For this clusters that were identified using k-means, the group cluster 0 is 28 records, cluster 1 is 50 records, cluster 2 is 54 records, so on. So on and so forth, I'm finding out. So I'm just trying to find out, like, so, I mean, is there any huge variation? If you see here, this one, the group 2, here there is a huge one-sided result, right? So, I mean, we're not sure whether it's right or wrong, but this is one point of view. So it will help you to, if you go and see why, by putting some kind of box plots or something, then you will know why and what is making this right happen. Actually, is there any learning? If there is no learning, you can ignore this particular part and you can go on to the next one. So this is the reason why I'm putting all these things, right? So clustering, just by putting clustering, things will not be enough. So we need to do further analysis. So this further analysis, you can always do it, but the most important thing is learning the technique. So that's also I'm doing. So now, after doing all this clustering, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find out see basically the clustering, how a cluster should look like. What is the role of a cluster? Let's understand that before I go through that particular method. Actually, sorry. So deleting all of this. Yes, okay. So basically, the rule is this: the clusters, if a cluster is there, the cluster data point should be as closely packed as possible, right? So that is the rule. The next rule is the distance between one cluster to another cluster should be as high as possible. So the meaning, the practical meaning of this is nothing but when we are grouping a cluster, when we are grouping a set of records under a cluster, they should be similar, right? Simple. And when we are having two clusters, these two clusters should be dissimilar. When we compare both the clusters, both the clusters should be dissimilar. For example, imagine you are having a data set where you are having four-legged animals. You are trying to do a grouping based on four-legged animals. So your machine learning says goat and sheep is there in one cluster, and you have another cluster which is having dog, which is a good thing, right? So because goat and sheep, to a greater extent, they are similar to each other, so there's nothing wrong for them to be grouped together. So further we can break it, but still, yes, similar. But when it comes to difference between goat, sheep, and dog, there is a huge dissimilarity, right? So that dissimilarity should show in your clustering. So that is the rule of thumb, actually, right? So we are trying to find out how much of that rule of thumb is being adhered to. And for that, we are using a method to measure statistically how much of that has been adhered to. So we are using a method called a Scopinet method, and we are also using something called dendrogram method, actually. So dendrogram, I will let you know sooner. The Scopinet method helps you to identify the distance between the clusters and how strongly they packed they are actually. So basically, it should be closer to 1. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find out, okay, the cluster which is created using group 1 is the Scopinet score. The cluster that is created using group 2, what is the Scopinet score? The cluster 3 with the next set of clusters which are created using group 3, what is the score likewise I'm trying to find out. So I feel that this one is much better comparatively. Like, so with the clusters that I created using this particular strategy in group 2, that is having a much better score actually, right? So here the breaking of the clusters have happened better in a better fashion. And now what I'm trying to do is so for this particular so now I have identified that this is having a better breaking of clusters, packing of clusters. So this particular aspect, what I'm trying to do is, for this I am creating this dendrogram. So if you see this dendrogram, basically it talks about how the clusters are combined together. So I have, if you see the smallest unit, this is the cluster. So many clusters are there, and then further the clusters are grouped together into bigger clusters likewise actually. So if you see here, if I have put the threshold, the dendrogram threshold as 200, that means I have to draw a line in this portion, right? So here, if you're putting 200, so how do you come at that 200? That depends on your business need again. So if you're going with 200, the dendrogram says that there are 1, 2, right? 3, 4, and some smaller clusters. So there is a majorly there are 4 clusters actually. If you have given the threshold as 300, this 300 will have 1 major cluster, 2 major cluster, and 2 major clusters and some smaller clusters. If you have given 400 as your threshold, then the dendrogram will show only 1 major cluster, right? One and two major clusters it will be showing actually. So likewise, so you can decide on that. So, but however, dendrogram is not a method to understand exactly how many clusters you need to have, but rather dendrogram is a method to know exactly how the clusters are broken or how they are combined together actually, and what is the threshold distance between them, right? So using this, you get a kind of clear-cut idea, basically, whether the number of clusters that you decided previously is almost similar to what's been shown here actually. So the dendrogram is not alone is the only diagram to help you understand how many clusters to decide actually. So you have already decided based on your decision on having 3 clusters or 4 clusters, how your cluster breaking and merging looks like, and how far they are from each other. How that means, so when you say how far, that means how similar clusters they look like, and when they are combined together, and when they are away from each other, how dissimilar they look like, right? So that rule you will be able to validate using this dendrogram. So if you see this 200, I have given the threshold as 200 here. If I given 200, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 dissimilar clusters. That is what is coming out, right? And then I have so many clusters packed inside actually, right? So packed inside, right? So this helps you to understand that aspect actually. So whether that distance rule, how much you are complying to, right? So that will come out clearly in your dendrogram actually. So using this, you can validate whether your strategy on deciding the number of clusters is correct or not, or it is making sense or not. Hope you got the points, and hope you got a clear-cut idea about what clustering is all about. If you have any questions about clustering, you can always comment, and I'll be in a position to support you with further information on that. Thank you so much for your time.